More than halfway through the Sportsmax Zone for this Monday. The quarterfinal stage of the Gold Cup is on the horizon and 4 of the 8 teams have been confirmed. Group A, reigning champions, the United States of America and Jamaica, both sealing their spots in the next round with emphatic victories. Both of them on Sunday afternoon, played simultaneously. Jamaica 5-0 over St. Kitts and Nevis, and Trinidad and Tobago beaten 6-0 by the USA. And here's how those results have affected the standings. The USA top of the table with their 2 wins and 1 draw, just like the Jamaicans, but because of their superior goal difference of +12, they win the group over the Jamaicans, Trinidad, Tobago and St. Kitts and Nevis with minus goal differences, 3rd and 4th in the standings. Jamaica certainly were fond of the number 5 on Sunday, having scored 5 past St. Kitts and Nevis to qualify for a 5th consecutive Gold Cup quarter-final. Jelani Archibald's own goal got things underway for the Reggae Boys before John Russell, Deshaun Bernard, Daniel Johnson and Corey Burke all got on the score sheet to secure the victory for the Jamaicans. Listen, head coach Austin Huggins said his team still had a way to go to catch up to the big boys in CONCACAF.
Well, we have learned a valuable lesson that to be competing with the big boys, we have to raise our standard a little higher, fitness-wise in particular. The ability to concentrate 100% from start to end. The ability to play more as a team in the attack and defense. But most importantly, though, I will have to say, the fitness level have to be a little more higher, because we play against the likes of America, even Mexico. We didn't play them, but when we look at the standard that America and Mexico, when we look at the TV, these are the guys that are in CONCACAF. And to see the level of fitness that they have, it's like we need to get more fitter to compete with these.
Austin Deco Huggins, he is the St. Kitts and Nevis national coach. Post-game, Reggae Boys head coach Hamer Hallgrimsson talked about the attacking prowess of his team.
We have options, and I talked about the attacking power and players, and it's different players. If we talk about, there's a difference between Corey and Shamar, there's a difference between Antonio and Shamar and Corey. So we have many versions of, for example, strikers. The same with the wingers. We have all kinds of wingers, and we can find moments where this player is better fitted than the other one. So hopefully when we get to know them and when we play more together, we can have maybe tactics and players for situations, so we can change the game with rotation or even moving players around. We don't need to do substitutions.
Reggae Boys head coach Hamer Hallgrimsson there. Joining us, our international football correspondent Simon Evans and former TNT defender Brent Sancho, whose nation we will get to soon. But first of all, gentlemen, how impressive were the Jamaicans on Sunday? Let me start with Simon.
Yeah, I think they were very impressive. I mean, you know, with the caveat that obviously they were playing the weakest team in the group. But I thought, you know, and we don't want to talk always about that Premier League front three for Jamaica, but again, you know, the interesting thing was the way that Jamaica, a little bit, the wingers who the first couple of games I noticed Gray and Bailey were very wide, and Antonio a little bit isolated perhaps down the middle. They played much closer, or certainly had spells of the game where both Bailey and Demari Gray were operating in those inside channels a little bit, and I thought that was really effective. I thought that's a much more modern way of approaching it, and they are able to connect with each other and combine much more. Defensively, you know, they were solid, Jamaica, and that midfield holding pair, again, very effective. So it's growing, you know. I'm starting to look at this Jamaica side and think they could really, you know, do something interesting in this tournament.
Brent, you're on record as suggesting that this could be, based on roster, the strongest ever Jamaica team that you have seen. Is there anything that you've seen in the last couple of matches that helps to enhance that view that you have?
I think the game against St. Kitts certainly showed a depth that the team have. I think Simon alluded to the fact that we saw different dimensions of their attacking prowess, and I think the game against St. Kitts would have, of course, put an exclamation mark to it. When you play in this sort of format, the Gold Cup, it's very important to have a deep squad, and I think that's what Jamaica is starting to show, that they have different types and ways that they can play. And when you go into, of course, the business end of this tournament, it's increasingly important to make sure that you can show that. And certainly in this game, we saw that. And yeah, I stick to my guns in suggesting that this is easily now the best team that Jamaica has put together on paper, I think probably in the history of the FA.
Brent, one of the biggest challenges that Jamaica has faced over the years has been the midfield. But with Joel Latibeaudiere, Lambert, and we saw Karim Parrish last night, are things beginning to evolve in the Jamaican midfield? Do you think that has improved the effectiveness of the team going forward, especially? Because over the past few years, Jamaica has struggled to score goals. That doesn't seem to be much of the problem anymore, at least certainly not in the Gold Cup so far.
It's been better. You know, it's not the finished article yet. I think what we've seen from a ball progression standpoint, it's a lot better in terms of moving through the different phases of the football field. One of the things I know coming into this tournament, there was a lot of discussion regarding Jamaica's ability to possess the football. We've seen it in patches, certainly in the America game, the Trinidad and Tobago game at St. Kitts of lower standard. So the question really is, of course, moving into the real meaty end of the tournament, whether or not when you have that sort of pressure from teams coming out of the group stages, can they possess the football under a press? That, to me, still needs to be answered, although we saw it in flashes against the US. But yes, certainly, the midfield has been a lot better from what I've seen in the past from Jamaica.
Yeah, and Simon, when you look at the projection, which you've already said that based on what you're seeing, you think that this Jamaican team can go deep into the championship, and you haven't said it, but it sounds as if you wouldn't be surprised if they go all the way.
No, I wouldn't. I think, I mean, the United States have blown away Trinidad and St. Kitts. The only test they had in this tournament so far was against Jamaica, and they drew that game, and arguably were fortunate to get a point out of that game. Mexico have been playing well, probably looking more dangerous in a lot of ways than the United States. But then last night they go and lose to Qatar. So I think this tournament is there for Jamaica if they continue to grow and develop, and we'll see. We'll learn some things in the next game or two about this team, about some of the players as well, some of the younger players. I was quite impressed with Deshaun Bernard last night. But let's see him up against a Mexico or a USA, full-strength USA attack. If it gets to the semi-final stage or the final stage and so on. So it's going to be a great experience for this team going ahead into the World Cup qualifying campaign eventually. But there is a chance to win a trophy here for Jamaica. Absolutely no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah, and Brent, Coach Hallgrimsson articulated the point earlier on about the depth of the team and the sort of options that he has up front. And I would suggest throughout most of the team as well, because you saw a defensive lineup last night without a Damian Lowe, who plays most of the matches, and they look just as good or even better, even though with the St. Kitts and Nevis not offering the kind of opposition that you want to read too much into. He does appear at many angles of all of the dimensions of his setup, that he does have options for players.
Yeah, no, I do think so. Especially the fact that, when you look at the composition, as you rightfully said, there were several regular starters not playing. It does says that he's right in what he's saying. When you're in this sort of format and, you spend a lot of time with each other, the players, they train hard together. It says to me, guys, that there is a lot of competitiveness in the training, because there is competition for starting spots, because I don't think really you could look through that squad and one or two, there may be one or two could suggest that they do have a starting position, but I feel like there is genuine competition for spots. And when you have that within a team, it does bode well for of course, the team being able to compete at the best and optimum level, and then B, from a perspective of camaraderie. And I think those two things are very, very evident from what I've seen so far in Jamaica. And as Simon rightfully said, I was very high on the Mexicans going all the way, but obviously they got stopped last night. And if that's the case, you can't look past Jamaica as probably the favourites to win the trophy.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the Mexicans have already made it through to the quarterfinals, and I don't know if they took their foot off the gas pedal last night, but we know the Mexicans tend to be strong. But to support your point, Brent, I agree with you that there's some evidence there's a lot of competition for places on the starting roster. Everything about Shamar Nicholson's game last night told me that he wanted to score. He wanted to score. There were times I thought he had passing options, but he wanted to score. And that to me tells me that he wants to, to put his hand up as a possible starter for this Reggae Boys front end, even though at the moment it looks hard for him. But you can see that the competition is there. Now, the Reggae Boys and the Soca Warriors certainly were not marching to the same beat on Sunday, with TNT shipping 6 goals in a loss against the USA. Brent, you are on record as not being optimistic about TNT's chances in these Gold Cup assignments. But is this worse than you expected?
No, it's not actually. I did think it would have been bad. And look, as I said before, and I did say it on record, this is not, the results is indicative of what is happening here in Trinidad and Tobago and football. It's a colossal failure. And at most point for me as a former national player, it's embarrassing. And a lot of it is down to poor decision making. Even right now, as we speak, we do have a normalization committee in power. And they have not helped the situation at all. The football is spiraling out of control downwards. And you just, as a Trinbagonian, and I think across the Caribbean, you have to feel for this country. And you have to feel for Trinidad. You have to feel for what you've seen. I know Simon messaged me when Trinidad was playing, and he was appalled to see how poorly Trinidad has dropped. And I've seen this coming. And that's my point. That has always been my point. Anyone that's been involved in this sport in Trinidad and Tobago for a number of years, you knew this was coming. And it happened. And it happened in front of millions and millions of people. And the sad thing about it, gentlemen, I couldn't tell you if there is going to be some sort of rising of Trinidad and Tobago football. Because as I sit here right now in Trinidad and Tobago, there's no plan for that. Because the question marks are, do we fire the coach? But if you bring anyone, the problem will remain the same. The problem is much bigger than the new coach, and it's much bigger than the players are on the field. The problem is a holistic one, and until we, Trinidadians and the powers that be that's in charge, face up to the music, we're going to keep seeing these types of results.
Notwithstanding those issues, Brent, and I want to hear Simon on this as well. When you look at how Trinidad set up against Jamaica and again against the United States last night, when you give good teams space to play, they will destroy you. Why do you think there wasn't an adjustment in that kind of setup from Angus Eve in terms of getting this team maybe a little bit higher up the pitch, maybe closing those spaces down a little bit more effectively? You're still on the field, you still have to play the game. But why that strategy? Because clearly it didn't work against Jamaica, so why would it work against the United States?
Well, he doesn't have the tools. Yeah. Sorry, Simon. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, no, I think that's an indication the coach doesn't trust the team to press. Because if you're not going to press your opponents in midfield, you have to sit back. And when you sit back, you give them space and you can get punished. And in the modern game, that way of playing, sitting back and hoping that the other team's going to give you the ball and make mistakes, rarely works these days. You have to be able to press and close down across the field. And that indicated he was either not confident in the fitness of his team or the discipline of them to conduct a decisive press collectively. That's what it looked like to me. Just to comment quickly on what Brent was saying there, I think the situation of Trinidad as well is a reminder to everyone that federations do actually matter. Football federations, we talk about them, we consider them to be politics and governance and administration. It matters who runs the game in individual countries and how the federations are run. Because if it's not done properly, you end up with what we see on the field in this Gold Cup.
Mm-hmm. Brent?
Yeah, just to add to what Simon said, he just doesn't have the tools, and that's a fact. I mean, there's a lot of conversation here in Trinidad about should he play higher, what type of player. Look, it doesn't matter who comes on that pitch. They are not of the level required to play against a USA. They're not of the level required to play against a Jamaica. And that's why you see the type of results that we have. To close a player down, you have to have the fitness levels that is required to play that. Those players do not have it. They're not playing that type of tempo of football week in, week out. I can pull one or two out of that equation, maybe a Levi Garcia. Of course, I have to pardon the likes of Kevin Molino because he's now coming off an injury. Okay. But when you look through that team roster, 1 through 23, they don't play at the level week in, week out to give them any chance to play against USA or Jamaica. And that's a fact. Trinidad and Tobago have produced top-class players in the top divisions in the UK and in Europe. We don't do that anymore. We don't create those type of players. We're not producing those type of players. We don't have the development things in place to produce those type of players. So, yes, it's going to be a struggle because, as I said, once you don't have the type of players on the pitch that can do those things, it doesn't matter who's the coach, because whatever system he plays there, the players can't execute it because they are not of the level.
Yep.
Okay, going to leave it there. Brent, thanks for talking to us, and Simon Evans as well. CONCACAF Gold Cup football continuing this week, and we're getting into the championship stages of this competition, so we look closely at it. Thanks, gents. Of course, USA winning the group, and Jamaica finishing second in the group. This is Group A, and they are awaiting the Group D results to see who they will be facing. So Jamaica will tackle the winners of Group D in the quarterfinals, and the USA will be tackling the runners-up of Group D in those quarterfinals. Mexico to take on the runners-up in Group C, and Qatar to be taking on the winners of Group C in the quarterfinals coming up later this week. We go to break. When we come back for second zone updates.